Every year, millions of hammers break at the same point, where the head meets the handle. One tool eliminated that joint entirely. Forged from a single bar of steel, the head and handle are one continuous piece. It has not fundamentally changed since 1923. It has outlived cheaper imports, composite materials, and an entire culture of disposable buying. 100 years later, America's one-piece hammer refuses to die, and the reason has less to do with steel than with the Swedish immigrants' stubborn idea about what a tool owes the hand that holds it. Ernest Otto Estwing was born on the Swedish island of Åland in 1884, the son of a limestone worker. Growing up surrounded by stone and sea, he learned early how much depended on the strength of your tools. At 21, Ernest boarded the SS Martha Washington with his sister Maria, arriving at Ellis Island in April 1906. Their destination was Rockford, Illinois, a city already humming with the noise of lathes, presses, and Swedish voices. In those first years, Ernest took whatever work he could find, listed as a machinist in Rockford's city directory by 1912. He married Anna Lindstrom, became a naturalized citizen, and enrolled in night school to master English and the machinist's craft. The 1916 bulletin from Rockford Technical Institute records his graduation, a certificate in machinist trades earned after long shifts and longer nights. He worked at Remington, assembling rifle mechanisms, and then at Bridgeport Machine Tool Company, where his hands shaped steel for hours on end. In those factories, Ernest saw the same failure again and again. A hammer's head flying loose, a wooden handle splintering after a few months of hard use. For men who built their lives with their hands, a tool that failed was more than an inconvenience. It was a betrayal. By 1923, Ernest had saved enough to file incorporation papers for Estwing Manufacturing Company. The address on the document was his own basement in Rockford. The founding promise was simple, almost stubborn. A one-piece hammer forged from a single piece of steel, head and handle as one. No joints, no glue, nothing to come loose. A tool that would last as long as the man who swung it. The first hammers were made by hand, one at a time, for local carpenters and stonemasons. Ernest's idea wasn't born from market research or advertising. It came from years of watching tools break and believing, quietly but fiercely, that the hand deserved better. In the basement workshop, the one-piece hammer began as a solution to a problem no one else seemed willing to solve. The steel was cold and hard, but the motive behind it was deeply human, a craftsman's answer to the question of what a tool owes its user. In the spring of 1925, a bold headline appeared in the pages of the American Machinist: "A hammer that won't break. The Estwing one-piece steel hammer." The ad spoke directly to union carpenters, promising a tool that would never splinter, never send a head flying across the job site, and never betray the hands that swung it. For carpenters who spent their days on scaffolds and rooftops, hammers were more than implements. They were extensions of muscle and memory. The promise of a hammer that could outlast a career was enough to spark curiosity, and then something more. Within weeks, the company's order ledger told the story. Weekly receipts jumped from a dozen to nearly 70. The basement workshop, once quiet and methodical, filled with the clatter of steel and the hurried rhythm of new demand. Local hardware stores began to ask for shipments by the crate. Word spread through union halls and job sites. There was a new hammer in town, and it didn't break. The orders kept coming. By the summer of 1925, Ernest Estwing faced a problem that most inventors only dream about. He couldn't keep up. The surge forced a decision. He acquired the old H.J. Brody and Company building at 1200 East State Street, filing city permits for a $12,000 renovation that would install a drop forge, a heat treatment furnace, and a 150-ton press. The Rockford Register-Star called it a symbol of modern American industry. Inside the new plant, the hammer's journey changed. No longer just a craftsman's answer to a local problem, it became a product of scale, shaped by fire, steel, and the collective pride of a growing workforce. The union carpenters who first responded to that ad became the audience for a tool that now carried the weight of a promise, head and handle as one, built not just to last, but to endure. The Estwing hammer was no longer just a solution, it was becoming a standard. A single line of numbers and stamped steel changed the hammer's fate in America. On October 22, 1929, the United States Patent Office issued patent 1,707,787 to George Estwing, a legal document that would serve as both shield and sword for a new kind of tool. The patent described not just a hammer, but a principle, head and handle forged from the same bar of steel, the grain running unbroken from striking face to grip. No welds, no pins, no joinery to fail. The language was precise, even stubborn, about what could and could not be copied. Inside the file wrapper, the examiner's questions and Estwing's replies read like a chess match. Prior art was raised and dismissed. Amendments clarified that only a true single-piece forging, continuous grain from top to tail, would count. For any competitor, the message was clear. Shortcuts would not pass muster, not with the Patent Office, and not in the eyes of the tradesmen who had started to trust this new hammer. The patent was not just a technicality. It became a market moat, a line in the sand that Estwing's counsel defended with steady resolve. By 1935, cease and desist letters began landing on the desks of rival toolmakers. Some tried welding heads to shanks. Others cast the parts and pinned them together, but none could claim the uninterrupted steel that the patent demanded. When one competitor, Hammer Company, pushed too far, Estwing filed suit in federal court. The 1937 case, Estwing versus Hammer Company, centered on the core claim. Only a hammer forged in one piece, with continuous grain, could wear the mantle. The settlement came 2 years later, with Hammer Company agreeing to withdraw their product for a decade. Every legal maneuver was a signal to the market, to the hardware stores, to the men on the job site, that the one-piece hammer was more than a clever idea. It was protected property, and Estwing would not let it be diluted or knocked off. The patent's authority forced rivals to retreat to old habits, two-piece construction, wood handles, or welded joints. For Estwing, the legal stronghold did not just keep competitors at bay. It bought time to master the forging process in-house, to turn a patent claim into a daily reality on the factory floor. The hammer's promise was now written in both steel and law, and every swing on a job site echoed that guarantee. At the heart of Estwing's promise lies a simple, stubborn idea. A hammer is only as strong as its weakest joint. In the Rockford plant, that idea takes shape in a line of heat and steel, each step a ritual that trades brute force for trust. Steel bars, 5 feet long and cold to the touch, are racked above the furnace, waiting their turn. When the door opens, the air shimmers. The bars are pushed in and brought to a glowing orange, somewhere above 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit, just shy of melting. At this temperature, the steel's grain structure loosens, ready to be shaped but not broken. A worker, sleeves rolled and face streaked with sweat, feeds the bar into a drop forge. The hammer's head, claw, and handle are pressed out in a single, violent stroke. There is no pause, no second chance. This is where the promise is. Forged. The grain of the steel runs unbroken from striking face to handle. A single path that will not split or loosen over time. James Ramos, who spent 35 years as a metallurgist at Estwing, once said, "The continuous grain forging eliminates the stress points you see in wood handle hammers. That is why the steel never cracks." Fresh from the forge, the hammer is still too hard for work. It is annealed, cooled slowly in a controlled oven, the way a craftsman tempers his own patience, to relieve internal stresses. Then comes the heat treat. The striking face is brought back up to temperature, then plunged into oil. This oil quench locks in a Rockwell hardness between 55 and 60 on the C scale. Hard enough to drive nails for decades, but not so brittle that the head will shatter. The rest of the hammer stays tough, able to flex and absorb shock. Once the steel is cooled, the piece is machined and polished by hand. The handle's grip recess is cut, the head is ground flat to within a few thousandths of an inch, and the surface is buffed to a satin sheen. At this stage, the hammer is nearly finished, but the story is not complete. The one-piece steel is a marvel of durability, but it comes with a trade-off. Every blow travels straight down the handle, sending vibration into the user's hand. The solution, leather wraps, vinyl grips, and later the shock reduction grip, would come later. For now, the hammer's promise is written in its grain. No welds, no glue, nothing to fail. Just steel, shaped by fire and pride, ready to outlast the man who swings it. The first Estwing hammers were all steel, unyielding, cold, and built to last. But even a tool that never breaks can feel harsh in the hand. By the early 1930s, Estwing's shop workers began experimenting with comfort. They cut strips of leather, stretched and wrapped them around the steel handles, then secured each grip with a single rivet near the end. The result was a handle that fit the palm like a well-worn glove, its surface warming over time and picking up the sweat and oil of daily work. Leather gave the hammer a sense of craft, a nod to the old ways, even as the rest of the tool looked forward. But leather had its limits. On rainy job sites, it could swell or stiffen. Years of use wore the edges smooth, sometimes slippery. By the 1960s, Estwing's engineers looked to new materials. They molded blue vinyl grips directly onto the steel, creating a seamless, weatherproof surface that could stand up to mud, sun, and winter cold. The blue handle became a signature, easy to spot on a crowded bench, impossible to mistake for anything else. Vinyl did not crack or rot, and it shrugged off rain and sweat. For many tradesmen, the feel of that blue grip meant a tool they could trust year after year. These changes were more than cosmetic. Each handle experiment was a quiet answer to a simple question. How do you make a tool that lasts forever, but also feels right in the hand? The solutions, first leather, then vinyl, showed a willingness to adapt without ever letting go of the core promise. Comfort mattered, but not at the cost of permanence. The next step would demand more than material swaps. It would call for a scientific fix to the one flaw steel could not hide, the shock that traveled straight from hammer to bone. In the 1990s, Estwing's engineers faced a challenge that no amount of steel could solve on its own. Every swing of a one-piece hammer sent a jolt up the arm, a reminder that durability sometimes comes at the cost of comfort. Inside the Rockford plant, the solution took shape not through marketing, but through testing and measurement. The answer arrived as the shock reduction grip, a polymer handle molded directly onto the steel. Its signature hump wasn't just for looks, it was engineered to flex and absorb the sting of each blow. Internal reports showed a 15% drop in peak vibration reaching the user's hand, a number that meant fewer numb fingers and less fatigue at the end of a long shift. The SRG wasn't a gimmick or a shortcut. It was the result of years spent studying what made the hammer both loved and feared. Estwing's team didn't soften the core promise. They wrapped it in science, using a proprietary blend of polymers that bonded to metal without slipping or peeling, even after years on muddy job sites. For the first time, a tool that prided itself on being unbreakable could also claim to be easier on the body. The blue-collar ritual, grabbing a hammer at dawn, swinging until dusk, became just a little less punishing. And the distinctive shape of the SRG handle became another mark of loyalty, a quiet signal that this was a tool designed for real work, by people who understood what real work felt like. A hammer isn't just a tool, it's a mark of belonging. For tradespeople, the Estwing isn't picked off the shelf on a whim. It is often handed down, its handle worn smooth by another set of hands. In union halls and family garages, stories pile up alongside the tools themselves. A Chicago carpenter remembers his father's Estwing, still resting on a nail above the workbench, the leather grip darkened by decades of sweat. Across the country, a mason in his 60s points to a blue-handled hammer and says, "That one's outlasted 3 trucks and 2 marriages." The loyalty runs deep, and it isn't just nostalgia. When asked what matters most in choosing a hammer, trade surveys echo a single word: durability. One recent poll of United States tradespeople found that nearly 4 out of 5 said they would rather pay more for a hammer that lasts than buy a cheap one twice. That same stubbornness runs through Estwing's warranty. It offers lifetime coverage, no fine print, as if the company is betting you will never need it. For many, that promise isn't just about saving money. It's about trust, about knowing the tool in your hand is the same one your mentor once swung, and that it will still be there for the next apprentice who earns it. In 1994, Estwing's boardroom filled with the weight of a decision that would define the company's next century. The numbers on the table were stark. Offshoring core forging could shave 12% off production costs, a tempting figure as cheaper imports flooded the market. On the other side of the ledger sat something harder to quantify: 150 jobs in Rockford, a century of factory know-how, and the promise stamped on every hammer that left the line. The debate, preserved in board minutes, ran late into the night. Some argued for flexibility, others for tradition. Dr. Linda Carpenter, an industrial historian, later called it a rare moment of manufacturing self-awareness. She points to the 1994 memo where the final vote is recorded. Estwing would keep all hammer and axe forging in Rockford. The cost savings were real, but the risk to the brand was greater. For the workers on the floor, the outcome meant another generation could clock in, knowing their labor still shaped every tool. For the company, the decision became a badge. American made, not as a slogan, but as a lived reality. That stubborn refusal to chase the lowest bidder is why the Blue Grip and the Estwing name still mean something on a crowded tool rack. The hammer's promise, head and handle as one, remained unbroken, not just in steel, but in the place that made it. Estwing's reputation did not stop at the job site. Over the decades, the company's single-piece philosophy spread into a family of tools: axes, bricklayers' hammers, roofers' picks, and the legendary geology pick that once traveled to the moon's doorstep. In the 1960s, as NASA prepared astronauts for the Apollo missions, Neil Armstrong practiced with an Estwing geology pick during lunar training. That same pick, forged in Rockford, became a quiet part of America's race to space. By 2005, the Smithsonian Institution placed an Estwing hammer in its National Museum of American History, recognizing it not as a relic, but as a living artifact of American industry. The company's centennial in 2023 brought new attention to this legacy. Limited edition hammers rolled off the line, stamped with the original logo, and collectors lined up for a piece of history. As analyst Megan Lopez points out, Estwing's refusal to compromise on the core design is exactly what gives its tools such lasting prestige. Each new product, each museum honor, each anniversary only deepens the sense that this hammer, and the company behind it, stands for something permanent in a world built on replacement. Today, nearly 8 out of 10 tradespeople still say that durability decides what they buy. That is why, in a world obsessed with upgrades, a one-piece hammer from Rockford still feels permanent. Estwing's refusal to change is its defiance, proof that some tools are not meant to be replaced. In a disposable age, lasting things remind us what is worth holding on to. Share your own Estwing stories or thoughts below.